Welcome, and thank you for joining us for another edition of Live by Heart Today. Our show begins now. Streaming from Retro Earth Studio and brought to you by We Are Historically, Conscious Brand Apparel. It's time for the next episode of Live by Heart
Today
with your hosts, Don Spiegelberg and Wendy R. Wolf.
Hello and welcome to the Live by Heart Today show, number 29. This is a show designed to help you navigate change, uncertainty, and the new world we find ourselves living in. We'll talk a little bit about science, a little bit about how our body works, a little bit about intuition, and we'll talk a lot about transformation. I'm Dawn Spiegelberg, a posture therapist and coherence coach, and this is a new quarter, and we're focusing on being proactive. Today's theme, responding versus reacting. And with me for our heart to heart today is my co-host, Wendy R. Wolf, professional transformation facilitator. Hi, Wendy.
Hi, Dawn. Thank you. I'm so grateful to be able to talk together about this responding rather than reacting. It's so naturally human, and so many times I've experienced it, right? Something happens, bam, I have these thoughts, I have these feelings, I have this impulsive want to do or not do or run away. And I'm so glad to be teasing this out today about how we can take a breath and make our choices.
Yeah, responding versus reacting, I think, has become a relatively well-known phrase. It's a concept, but practicing it is a completely different story.
Yes.
So that attests to our mind being able to understand very clearly, very easily, but then putting into practice
Yes.
is not as easy.
This feels like a culmination of a lot of what we've spoken about in the last 28 weeks. We spent a lot of time on what we called neutrality, which is equanimity, our ability to be with and not resist and not judge and not be carried away. So we have that nice foundation, if any, whoever's been listening, who wants to listen. And then we spent a long time also on relationships and how do we be captain of our ship when everything's going a little stormy? How do we stay in relationships, stay with when things are rough? And so everything we're going to say today is built on those two wonderful foundations.
Yeah, and those foundations are essential for building the whole rest of it, just like Maslow's hierarchy of need has a foundation. And it's proven time and time again, for example, when war breaks out, how that lower level is completely shifted. And when the safety and security and food and shelter, when that's taken away, then you have to start over. You have to rebuild from that foundation in order to reestablish the place that you were at. And it seems to me that so often people are living in a way that they're constantly having to reestablish that foundation. Their foundation isn't set. And that's what you mean by having neutrality, having the wherewithal to be in good relationship, because we started with us first. We started with our own strong foundation, and then that lays the groundwork for others to develop their foundation too.
Yeah.
Our prior show was about focus, and the show before that was about rest. So perhaps we can tie in a little about rest before we continue with our list of how to be proactive, because once you have a foundation of clothing, just like Maslow's hierarchy, um, a house over your head, you know where your food is coming from. That allows you to rest, because without those things, then we are threatened. Our body is physically not safe.
Mhm.
And when we don't feel safe, then we search for the threat in order to address it. But if we can't put our finger on what that threat may be, then we're in a constant state of having to reestablish our safety time and time and time again. We don't sleep
Mhm.
well, and we don't digest the food that we do eat.
Mhm.
So resting is so important.
Mhm. Yes, and we've talked about this a few times, but I feel like it's so foundational. If you don't mind reminding us all about the sympathetic and parasympathetic, because that is directly about our ability to rest in our body and in our soul.
Yeah, that's a good point. So our nervous system has two responses, and this is the autonomic nervous system, which means we aren't in it's voluntary. Actually, it would be called involuntary. It's involuntary, and it happens without us needing to do take an action for it
Mhm.
to. And it's based on our environment and our perceptions and our experience. So the two responses are sympathetic, which means there's a threat, and that puts us in what is commonly referred to as fight, flight, or freeze. And that is a specific response necessary for us to keep our physical body safe so that we can continue living. Because without safety in the physical body, then we perish. So that's priority number one. And
Mhm.
there are physiological responses in relation to that. So our heart rate increases, our breathing increases. It's a little shallower, but it increases. The number of breaths per minute go up. Our body, this is so fascinating to me. Our body prepares to run or fight, so it dumps sugar into our bloodstream. And that sugar dump, right, fuels our body to take this response, to
Mhm.
take action the way we need to, and other things too. And so the energy stores that we've collected in moments of stress are used up. You don't run away from the mountain lion or the bear with only 30% of your full capacity.
Yeah.
You use all of your energy to do it.
Yeah.
And we can look at the opposite of that, which is the parasympathetic response, which is resting. It's known
Mhm.
as feed and breed, or rest and digest. And that's when our body is calm, we're renewing our energy,
Mhm.
and our physical body feels safe. So if someone's physical body isn't safe, then automatically they're in the sympathetic response.
Yeah.
And over time, it's really draining. And scientists are now discovering that this stress response is what underlies all disease. Isn't that fascinating? So when we can shift into the resting, into the renewal of our energy stores, that's when growth happens. That's when we go up higher on Maslow's hierarchy.
Mhm. Yeah, and we can learn and we can renew ourselves and we can make choices in a more conscious way from this parasympathetic place.
Yes,
Mm.
because cognitively, when you're under stress, the sole function of the brain is to identify the threat.
Yeah.
And if it's not evident, right, if it's not a bear standing in front of you, then you're constantly searching. And if you're constantly searching, that doesn't allow you the higher cognition, like you mentioned, of learning. You're not seeing all the possible options in your life. You're limited to just a few. So it's a
Mhm.
big difference.
Yeah, and as you speak, I know we've talked about this several times, but as you're speaking, I'm just noticing our society, how much we're not accessing that rest. We're not accessing the parasympathetic. We're not, there's a lot of feeling of threat. There's a lot of identifying who's, who's threatening us. It's just very fascinating patterns that are being played out, and they have been for a long time, but today it's pretty obvious.
Yeah, yes, it seems very obvious. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about rest. I've been referring to it as renewing energy stores, and your digestion becomes better, more efficient. But that's the body's response. Let's talk a little bit about how rest affects other aspects of our being.
In our soul, it's one of the, one could say, blessings, or one could say mindset, one could say the internal soul experience, where we can find rest, calm. We can find a place that is, we can go into. I seem to remember I did this, this last time. In the body, energetically, it can perceive as safety, as comfort, as ease. And I mean, just tuning into it, it just changes everything. And I feel like, the most important thing to say here is that these ways of being are something that we can be and have and do and experience inside, no matter what's happening in our world. We might need to go to work, or we might need to take care of the kids, or we might need to go exercise, or sit and watch a show. Whatever we're doing, we can be in this wonderful experience.
So it's not just sleeping in your bed for
Not
7 or 8 hours.
Yeah, it's not. So that's the beauty of it, as we practice and allow this peacefulness, this letting go.
And that letting go,
let it happen all the time.
Yes, I'd like to mention that idea of letting go and what's possible. My youngest has had trouble sleeping lately, and he said to me, notice in me and tell me what's going on. So he asked me to look at his activity, to look at his mind and the way he thinks, to look at his feelings and the feelings that he has. And so I sat for a moment and I really looked with objectivity and with curiosity. And it turned out that he was being woken up at night because of his mind. His body is developing, he's growing, and it's on track. And it's ahead of the curve, right? He's tall and he's physically active and very capable. And emotionally, he's very advanced. We talk about very advanced things for a 10-year-old, soon to be 11. Right? And when I looked at his mind was in competition with his body and his feelings and his spirit. And his mind was grasping to catch up.
Yes.
Wanting. And when I pointed that out to him, I said, it's not in rest, right? It's in anxiety. He said, oh, and then in 30 seconds changed it. And he's sleeping great now. It's really amazing. Yeah, but that's rest on every level, rest.
Yes. And it does take something for all the parts of ourselves to keep up with ourselves. It does. And I was saying to you as we were getting ready that I take time, I cogitate, I let my mind work it out. Because the world changes and my inner world changes, and my mind needs to catch up. It takes a minute, and that's okay. Yeah, but to not be stressed about it, we can let go. Oh, it's okay, mind. You're just catching up. Oh, okay.
Just catching up is really interesting because our subconscious has paradigms, right? Our subconscious tells us how to think about what we're thinking about. So I've got a great example of housework, right? Housework for me was always such a chore. Ha ha ha. It was such a chore. And it felt so burdensome before. And that was based in a paradigm that I was limited, that I was being limited by having to do this. And it's completely changed. And so when you say our mind catching up, we're talking about a couple of things, right? Not just
Yes.
our conscious mind, but also our subconscious mind changing paradigms, changing beliefs.
Yes.
And you've heard people talk about memes and memetics, which are similar to genes and genetics. They're passed on, and we carry this information. And freeing yourself from some of those heavy beliefs takes time and attention.
It does. It does. Yes. And that's some of the work that I do, is to go below the everyday consciousness to perceive, and then also be able to shift in ways that are become more and more conscious. And so that's kind of behind all this. I hope as we go through these wonderful steps that we've talked about, that we will talk about, that we recognize that it takes something to be able to do that. You know, you and I have been working the muscle of being able to take a breath and make a choice. And that, you know, these things are the first thing to do.
And that leads us to the second thing to do, which is beautifully, we talked a little bit in our alarm conversation about investigating.
Yes.
So when something triggers us to pay attention, when something calls our attention, it's important to investigate. And I'd like you to talk about some of the more inner investigations that are possible, because we know about the outer investigations. If my smoke alarm is sounding and I'm hearing it, and then I notice, oh, I'm smelling lots of smoke and my eyes are seeing it, those are external signs, external investigations. But talk a little bit about the internal.
Yes. And this is core to what I do, is that to tune into the senses that we have in our soul, our deep information. And you know, you and I both, we have tuning into what's going on with the body, which is a whole nother thing. You know, what the pain might mean, what the disturbance or the emotion in the body might be saying, and to communicate with the body and shift. And I see as another whole aspect is to look in the soul to our more deep within, but also deep into the world, below the surface of the world, about what's going on, and opening our senses to do that in comfortable ways. Some people are open and they're too open and it's disturbing. So it's very important to balance that, but to be able to tune in and notice, what do I see? What do I notice? You know, what do I see with my eyes closed? If that makes sense to people, great. If not, just ignore that part.
One thing you're talking about, and I can mention this from my own experience, if I'm upset about something, if something has really caused me to be angry, and my husband walks in the room, he knows it immediately.
Oh yeah.
So that's what we're talking about, right? When you talk about what's under the world, what's under the surface,
right?
It's the energy, the vibration of what's happening in between people. And living by heart means that we understand that our heart is the source of the electromagnetic field for our physical being, and that electromagnetic field is being projected into the environment around us, just like a radio station projects the station, projects the and that you can tune to, right? So some people are tuned into country music and some people are not tuned into country music, but the country music is still there.
Yes. Yeah, it's a really good way to talk about it, how the radio waves are all here, but only some people are tuned in. That's really good. I also really appreciate you have so many scientific ways to speak to some of the things that I'm just like, oh, it's woo-woo, just like it or don't,
Leave it or don't.
Right? But like and I believe that's going to continue to increase the amount of information that we're getting and we don't know why. We don't need to know why. It's nice when we do. But, I love the picture of the radio because pretty much everyone knows that all the radio stations are happening all the time.
Right. And we didn't always have radio. We weren't always aware that radio was possible. And it's fascinating to imagine that radio has a receiver and a transmission that we can't see.
Right.
But that this box is capable of tuning into. And you can think of our mind as kind of a box.
Yes.
That can tune into these different levels of vibration. And what's beautiful, I love this. I always wondered about people who were married for a long time and how it seemed like they started thinking the same things and they started looking similar. This is why, because we all have boxes and we're tuned into each other. So over time, we get accustomed to how the other person thinks and they influence how we think. And then eventually you begin thinking the same thing. And it's beautiful. It really is.
We learn a lot from each other. I think we've said before in the program, I'm so one of the most important things is who we choose to live with, who we choose as our partners makes such a difference for us, how our life is and what we become. It's amazing. Yes, because of all that time and matching, all that energy.
And it's been said that you are the culmination of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So the way they are is the way you are.
Yeah.
Isn't that fascinating?
It is. So about investigation, I feel like the most important thing about it is that we allow ourselves to continue to come into more and more clarity. And yes, with our mental capacities and with the input, whatever, if you put good things into a computer, you get what you want. If you put bad things into a computer, you get what you want. So it's really important to get good data. And all that. So that's the physical stuff, but also in the soul, to continue to let go of my already always listening, Landmarks calls it, my already always, how do I see it? What do I expect? There's a lot of that going on. The habits I'm in of thought and belief and the past experience and the future fears, that's all mitigating my experience inside me and outside of me. And so allowing clarity to come and to wash away more and more, layer after layer of assumptions, one could say, or human programming, one could say, so that we can get closer and closer to what's really going on.
So you're talking about taking off the rose-colored glasses and the blue-colored glasses and the yellow-colored glasses and seeing with truth and clarity. In Buddhism, they call that ignorance. Your rose-colored glasses, whatever color glasses you're wearing is referred to as ignorance, which is fascinating, very fascinating.
Yeah, but it makes sense because it keeps us from the truth. So it's a willful filter, not always so conscious.
Yes, and learned, not conscious because we learn them. Right,
and so I believe a lot of us who meditate, certainly people in my tradition, certainly we're continuing to let go of what we thought or believe. And this is, some people have trouble with this because I'm all into reality, really into reality. But as we talk through these steps, I don't put some people are like, but we should stand in, what do they call it? Positive thinking or something. I want to make that choice, but it's going to go later under my choice. But first I want to start with good data. So I can choose from reality, not theory.
That's a good point. With that point regarding reality versus theory, let's take a short break and we'll be right back.
And thank you to our sponsor for making the show possible. Hooray!
Welcome back. This is the Live by Heart Today show, and we are discussing investigation. This is number 2 on our list. And reality against theory, and making the choice based in what's really going on, what we can really perceive, and having clarity to perceive what's happening outside us, but also how we're perceiving and being affected inside us. Can you talk just a little more about reality and then how to choose so that we're not choosing just based on knee-jerk reactions or prior beliefs and paradigms?
I believe it's a process. Like we all have our own experience of reality right now, which is different than it would have been if we had different upbringings, if we had different experiences, if we had different parents. It would be different in the same exact experience. Like I'm always amazed. Michael and I are together a lot lately, a lot, but we have totally different experiences. So I believe it's a process. It's a dedication to, it's a practice. Am I willing to notice, oh, is that really what's happening? Or is it my story? We talked earlier about Byron Katie.
Yes.
Her question continues to be, is that true? Is that true? And it's a very intellectual process that she has, and that's great. Do it on the intellect, do it relationally, do it emotionally. Like I have an emotional reaction. Is this, I'm having it, it's real, but is it based on what's really happening? Like Michael and I have been playing with conflict resolution lately in really cool ways. And I am taping the conversations. And the other day I was so stimulated because I felt like he was like against me. He was tripping me. He was not seeing my best self. And I was like, I was stimulated enough to go back and meditate with that conversation that night instead of sleeping, instead of going to bed, because I was stimulated. I'm like, what happened here? And I watched, and it was like I saw where I was getting that emotional, and I saw where like he was doing something else, but I could see his point of view really clearly. When I replayed it on the audio tape, I could see why he thought what he thought, and what he said he was doing was true for him. And of course, my emotional reaction was valid, but I could see how I was going in a different direction, and then I just could let it all go.
That's beautiful. And you actually went through the process of Byron Katie's second question, which is, can you absolutely know that it's true? So you asked the question, is this true? But then your process going through the whole thing was answering the question, can I absolutely know that it's true? And that was a beautiful process. How many of us would love to have a recording of what happened so that we could view it from neutrality, view it from outside the feelings and the triggers and all the muck that happens when we're in the conversation?
Yes, it was really helpful. I'm so
you
glad
weren't doing that to say, I told you so. You weren't doing that to say, you said this and that's blah, blah.
Right. I was actually doing it to the opposite, to inquire what was his point of view there, because I was clear that his point of view was against me. And then I saw it wasn't.
Isn't that beautiful?
It was really helpful.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's true investigation, I'll have you know. Right? That's scientific investigation.
Yes. And so since we're so far into this, I had talked about a story I wanted to share under this part about because sometimes the signal and the noise, we can't tell what's what. We can't tell what's what. And just quickly, many years ago now, I was camping on the beach in Baja, and I was out doing this kayak thing, but I was in a lot of clothes. It was cold. So a lot of clothes, and then all of a sudden this wave came and I was in the water. And it turns out that I got stung by I can do it, stingray. I was stung by a stingray, and but I didn't know it. And I was doing everything I could to get out of the water with like so many clothes on, back onto the kayak. And then meanwhile, I was getting swept over and around this thing that was dangerous. So I was like under a lot of pressure. So I was all about the survival and getting on the boat and getting back to shore before a thing happened. And I didn't even feel it until like I was like safe. And then it was screaming pain. I wasn't screaming, but it was screaming pain. And the person who knew what was going on was like, it couldn't have been a stingray because you would have known right away. But no, I was overwhelmed with what the survival imperatives.
Yes.
And so on the physical, like it's, that's an extreme example, but a lot of us are in survival.
And survival that is a threat to our physical continuation.
Or at least
that's
feels
a very
like
good
it.
point.
Like that's our experience a lot, I think.
Yeah, this or I die. And you experience that. So in regard to the body, the physiology, this is really important. The bigger picture, the you need to get yourself out of this very dangerous situation that could cause your complete demise is more important than that experience of the stingray. What do? Do they bite? Or do they scratch?
It's
I don't know what it's called.
It's their tail.
Oh, their tail stings you.
Yes.
Okay, so that was completely secondary to you getting to safety. And that's why you didn't feel it. Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, and it reminds me of in meditation, the first time people come to workshops or a class, so often, it's like every time one person this happens, they come up after and like, this is really great and all, except for it gave me a headache or gave me a shoulder ache or what. I'm just like, and I look and I'm just like, could it be that you came with the headache and you didn't even know?
Yes.
And they're like, I'll check that out. And then they come back, they're like, yes, I have this headache.
The headache was secondary. And that's incredible because this is important for people to know, when we are searching for rest, it will be a process to attain rest through our whole system. And this is something you taught me. When I was seeking rest, there would be things that would come up that would show me how I wasn't staying in alignment, how I wasn't in rest. And for me, a lot of it had to do with my responsibilities, and then and time was woven into it. So we've got to go right now and get you to school because this is what time it starts. And I'd be okay. And then that moment, 10 minutes, and we've got to be out the door, I'd be stressed. Right. And it took a while to not be stressed through the whole process. In fact, coronavirus has been a blessing for me because I've been able to completely change the timing of what I'm responsible for. All my deliveries have completely changed. And I've been able to reset that entire focus and crunch that I experienced, that belief system over time. And now it is what it is. And what's amazing is that I'm almost always on time. Like sometimes there's a minute or two, a child will call me and say, I'm not on the Zoom I'm supposed to be on. Right. And I've already opened my own Zoom and it's time for me to be on my own. Right.
Yes.
So little things like that happen, but it's not frantic like it used to be. It's It's just
Ah,
peaceful. It's beautiful.
what a blessing. And I'm expecting that less and less you are stimulated by that. You just go and you help them with the Zoom, you come back. It's
Yes.
like, that's the part where can we just continue to retrain ourselves not to be like this?
Yes, frantic. It's
Mhm.
true. And
And
so this is number 2 investigation,
mhm.
using
And
our senses
yeah.
from a place of rest so that we understand internally
Mhm.
and we can see externally with clarity. I loved you mentioned the word dedication, being dedicated to the process, and trusting, right? Because we have a mental capacity, and you mentioned our soul capacity. Our soul capacity increases.
Yes, it really does. So it gets easier. Our backpack gets lighter and our
Mm,
muscle grows of
mm,
being able to um, really notice what is. And then the next step of be with it. Can I be with it? Which is a whole nother ball of wax. But that's also a muscle that grows.
let's spend our last 4 minutes or so talking about being with it. We've mentioned it in other shows.
Mhm.
You touched on it briefly when you mentioned removing, and I called them, the rose-colored glasses, the
Mhm.
amber-colored glasses, and
Mhm.
seeing what's really there.
Mhm.
And then when you see what's really there, being all right with it.
Mhm. Yeah, like, with that story I said about Michael, about like I listened, meditated through, and realized his point of view was valid. He wasn't out to get me,
Mm,
or like whatever. I was pretty stimulated. That's why I did it. And then I could allow myself to change my mind
mm,
and be with and allow more space in our relationship. Allow more,
mm.
like, yeah, sometimes it seems like he's not on my side, but maybe he is. And so can I let that shift? So that's one part of it. But I see it more as stopping resisting, stopping judging, stopping
Mm.
fighting, stopping telling myself and everyone else this isn't how it should be, because it doesn't help from my
That's the
perspective.
observer effect, by the way.
Yeah, say more.
That's Thomas Young's experiment where they observed what was happening with the photons, and the photons no longer behaved like waves,
All right.
and they were just behaving like particles. And what does that mean? It means you're flattening the wave function. It means you're taking away the energy. You're taking away the wholeness and not seeing all of reality. And that's what
Mhm.
scientists are missing when they say, oh, it's the observer effect that causes this change. What they don't understand is that their perception of reality is shifting because
Yes.
they're not seeing the whole reality. And you went through that beautiful meditation where you were able to see the truth of the whole situation outside of being in it. And when you were in
Yes.
it, it was so difficult because of the belief that you had that maybe he was out to get you, or the feeling,
Right.
oh, he's not on my side.
Yeah.
And that wasn't the whole story.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I love the observer effect, you bringing it in here, because it really matters that we're there, that we're noticing, how we're noticing,
Mm.
what we're expecting really changes things. So can we let all that go, observe it, and then not resist that?
Yes, this is living by heart. When you live by heart, you know the function of your brain, right? Our analyzer is to compare, contrast, measure, and it turns out it's also making judgments.
Yeah.
And when you can honor that for its role, which is to decide between chocolate and vanilla,
Mm-hmm.
but also not be caught up in it and not let it rule everything that you perceive regarding your reality, then you understand how living by heart is more encompassing. It allows
Mm-hmm.
you to rest. It allows you to investigate situations from clarity, from safety.
Yes. And then start to be more and more with what is, which sets us up to be able to make conscious choices moving forward.
Yes. The equanimity that can occur when you see the whole truth, that he is for you and his opinion is his opinion, but it's not against you.
Right. Right.
That's beautiful.
So, next time we're going to be talking about more steps that help us to make conscious choices and to act and not react.
Yes.
Which makes our life so much better.
All better because we live by heart. Thank you, Wendy. And
Thank you, Dawn.
Everyone who's watching today. We want to hear from you. So please, if our conversation spoke to you, tell us what's on your heart by leaving us a comment. For more information about how you can live by heart, please visit us at the livebyhearttoday.com site. Like and follow this page, turn on the notifications so you don't miss a single airing. And we're here every week on Thursdays at 4:44 Pacific. From our heart to yours, we're creating a better tomorrow because we live by heart today.
And that concludes this portion of
Live by Heart Today!
Thank you for watching. Join us every Thursday at 4:44 p.m. for another episode of Live by Heart
Today!
Let's give a shout out to our sponsor. Thank you, We Are Historically, for making this show possible.